Why did Last Man Standing keep replacing its main characters? From Kristen and Ryan's recasting to Mandy's unexpected departure, the show saw major shakeups. Then, just as fans adjusted, ABC canceled it, only for Fox to bring it back with even more surprises. Was ABC's decision purely business, or was there another reason? Why didn't Molly Ephraim and Caitlin Dever return? And how did Tim Allen manage to bring Home Improvement's Tim Taylor into the final season? Let's dive into detail. The success of Last Man Standing was something that few people saw coming. When it first premiered in October of 2011, it felt like just another sitcom, lighthearted, funny, and centered around a suburban family. But there was something different about this one. Tim Allen, returning to television after years away, had found a way to bring a unique energy to the show, mixing comedy with real-world discussions about politics, family, and generational clashes. Audiences connected with it immediately. Within weeks, it became one of the highest-rated comedies on ABC, pulling in over 13 million viewers for its debut episode. It seemed like Last Man Standing was set to have a long and successful run, and for a while it did. Behind the scenes, however, the show's cast and characters began changing almost as soon as it started. One by one, familiar faces disappeared, replaced by new actors or written out of the story altogether. At first, these changes felt minor, just the kind of casting adjustments that happen with many long-running shows. But over time, they became harder to ignore. Fans started asking questions. Why was Kristen suddenly played by a different actress? Why did Ryan look completely different from one season to the next? And as the years went by, the departures didn't stop. Some actors left on their own, while others were replaced due to creative decisions made by the producers. Then, in 2017, Last Man Standing was canceled out of nowhere, leaving fans shocked and angry. It all started with Kristen Baxter. Played by Alexandra Krosny in the show's first season, Kristen was introduced as Mike Baxter's oldest daughter, a young single mom trying to balance raising her son Boyd while figuring out her place in the world. Krosny's portrayal was well received, bringing a mix of warmth, humor, and realism to the character. She was a major part of the show's family dynamic, often standing at the center of important storylines. And then, just like that, she was gone. When Season 2 premiered, Kristen looked completely different. The character was now played by Amanda Fuller, an actress with a more mature appearance and a slightly different approach to the role. ABC and the producers called it a creative decision. But behind the scenes, there was more to the story. The showrunners had decided that Kristen's character needed to shift in a new direction. Instead of being a young, struggling mother, they wanted her to seem older, more experienced, and more capable of going head-to-head with her father on political and social issues. There was also the issue of casting logistics. Even though Kristen was supposed to be the oldest Baxter daughter, Krosny was actually younger than Molly Ephraim, who played Mandy, the middle sister. The producers felt that this made the family dynamic seem visually off. With all these factors in mind, they made the call to recast. Not all fans were happy with the change. Many felt that Krosny had brought something unique to the role, and that the shift made Kristen feel like an entirely different person. Still, the show moved forward, and over time, Fuller's version of Kristen became familiar to audiences. But the recasting of Kristen wouldn't be the last major change to the Last Man Standing cast. The next shift came with Ryan Vogelson, the father of Kristen's son, Boyd. When Ryan was first introduced in Season 1, he was played by Nick Jonas in a single-episode guest appearance. His version of Ryan was nervous, immature, and completely unprepared for the responsibilities of fatherhood. He was portrayed as the kind of guy who ran away when things got tough, leaving Kristen to raise Boyd on her own. But when Season 2 came around, Ryan was back, and he was barely recognizable. Now played by Jordan Masterson, Ryan had been transformed into a completely different character. He was no longer just the deadbeat ex-boyfriend. He was now an intelligent, politically outspoken liberal who frequently clashed with Mike Baxter's conservative viewpoints. This change wasn't accidental. New showrunner Tim Doyle had big plans for Ryan. He wanted the character to be more than just comic relief. He saw an opportunity to use Ryan as a counterbalance to Mike, someone who could challenge him in debates about social issues, parenting, and life in general. By making Ryan a more developed and consistent character, the show gained a new layer of depth. While Mike represented old-school values, Ryan embodied the perspectives of a younger generation. Their back-and-forth exchanges became a staple of the show, giving it more substance beyond the typical sitcom formula. The transformation of Ryan was one of the most dramatic changes to Last Man Standing, but it wasn't the last. As the show continued into its later seasons, more familiar faces would disappear, and the reasons behind their departures would only become more complicated. Some left because they had other career opportunities, while others were written out due to network decisions and behind-the-scenes changes. One thing was clear: the show was evolving, whether fans liked it or not. Despite the cast shakeups, Last Man Standing remained a success, consistently ranking as one of ABC's top-performing comedies. It had built a dedicated fan base that continued tuning in, even when the characters changed. But in 2017, everything came crashing down. ABC made the shocking decision to cancel the show, despite its strong ratings. It wasn't just any cancellation, it was completely unexpected. Last Man Standing was still drawing millions of viewers per episode, and Friday night sitcoms rarely performed that well. Fans were stunned, cast members were caught off guard, and almost immediately, speculation began about why the network had pulled the plug. At the time, ABC insisted that the decision had nothing to do with politics. They claimed that they were moving away from Friday night comedies and shifting their focus toward fantasy and sci-fi programming. But many people, including Tim Allen himself, weren't convinced. Just 2 months before the cancellation, Allen had made a controversial comment on Jimmy Kimmel Live, comparing being a conservative in Hollywood to living in 1930s Germany. The remark sparked backlash, and some believed that it had contributed to ABC's decision to drop the show. Whether or not politics played a role, the cancellation sparked a massive backlash. Fans weren't just disappointed, they were furious. Within 24 hours of the announcement, an online petition to bring the show back had already gathered more than 400,000 signatures. Social media exploded with posts demanding a revival. The hashtag #SaveLastManStanding began trending, with thousands of tweets flooding ABC's official accounts. Some fans even took it a step further, organizing billboards in major cities like New York and Los Angeles, calling for the network to reverse its decision. Even politicians got involved. Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker publicly criticized ABC, suggesting that the show had been canceled because of its conservative-leaning themes. While the debate raged on, one thing was clear: there was still a massive demand for Last Man Standing. Fans weren't ready to let it go, and behind the scenes, efforts were already being made to find the show a new home. ABC might have walked away, but the story wasn't over yet. In the months that followed, new developments would emerge, leading to one of the most unexpected television revivals in recent history. After ABC's cancellation of Last Man Standing, fans refused to let the show go without a fight. Social media campaigns flooded Twitter and Facebook, petitions gained hundreds of thousands of signatures, and the backlash against the network grew louder. It wasn't just about the cancellation of a sitcom, it was about a show that many viewers felt represented them in a way few others did. For 6 seasons, Last Man Standing had been one of the few mainstream television comedies that openly incorporated conservative viewpoints, and some fans believed ABC's decision was politically motivated. Despite ABC's insistence that the cancellation had nothing to do with politics, the controversy surrounding the decision only fueled more anger. Tim Allen himself was vocal about his disappointment, saying he felt blindsided by the decision. Other cast members, including Nancy Travis and Hector Elizondo, also shared their sadness, but some of the younger actors, like Molly Ephraim and Caitlin Dever, had already begun moving on. ABC had made its choice, and for a while, it seemed like Last Man Standing would remain in television history as yet another great show that ended too soon. Behind the scenes, however, something unexpected was happening. ABC may have dropped Last Man Standing, but the show's production company, 20th Century Fox Television, was still interested in keeping it alive. Since ABC didn't own the series, Fox had the rights to shop it around to other networks. Initially, they reached out to Country Music Television, known for reviving Nashville after it had been canceled by ABC. Talks also took place with NBC, but neither deal came through. By early 2018, it looked like the fan campaigns had been in vain, until Fox entered the picture. Executives at Fox had been paying close attention to how the Roseanne reboot performed on ABC. The revival of the classic sitcom, which focused on a working-class family with conservative views, was a massive success, proving that there was still a strong audience for shows that reflected that perspective. Fox saw an opportunity. They knew Last Man Standing had been a proven ratings hit, And with the fan backlash against its cancellation still fresh, reviving the series could be a smart business move. On May 11, 2018, Fox officially announced that they were bringing Last Man Standing back for a 7th season. The news was met with excitement from fans, but the revival came with one major problem. Not everyone was available to return. When Last Man Standing was canceled by ABC in 2017, many cast members had assumed it was the end. Tim Allen and Nancy Travis were still available, as was Hector Elizondo, but others had already moved on to new projects. The most notable departure was Molly Ephraim, who had played Mandy Baxter for 6 seasons. Ephraim's version of Mandy was a standout character, funny, confident, and known for her sharp wit. Her comedic timing made her one of the fan-favorite characters, and many viewers felt that she added an irreplaceable energy to the show. However, after the cancellation, Ephraim had quickly taken on other acting commitments, and by the time Fox revived the series, she was unavailable to return. This left the producers with a difficult choice: either write Mandy out of the show or recast the role. Instead of trying to find a look-alike or someone who could imitate Ephraim's performance, the producers decided to take a different approach. They cast Molly McCook, an actress who looked nothing like her predecessor and had a completely different comedic style. The decision sparked immediate backlash. Many fans felt that McCook didn't fit the role, and when the new season premiered, social media was flooded with complaints. The hashtag #NotMyMandy began trending, with viewers criticizing the casting decision and saying that the new version of Mandy didn't feel like the same character. McCook, for her part, handled the criticism professionally. Instead of trying to replicate Ephraim's performance, she made the role her own, focusing more on Mandy's love for fashion and her journey towards starting a business. Over time, some fans began to accept her portrayal, but the change remained one of the most debated aspects of the revival. Mandy wasn't the only character who saw a major shift. Another major change was the role of Eve Baxter, played by Kaitlyn Dever. Unlike Ephraim, Dever didn't leave because she was unavailable. She left because her acting career had skyrocketed. After the cancellation of Last Man Standing, Dever landed several major film roles, including Booksmart and Unbelievable, which earned her critical acclaim. By the time Fox revived Last Man Standing, Dever's schedule had become too busy for her to return as a full-time cast member. The producers didn't want to recast Eve, since she was such a crucial part of the Baxter family dynamic. Instead, they decided to make her an occasional guest star. The show explained her absence by saying that Eve had joined the Air Force Academy, and throughout the later seasons, she would occasionally appear in video calls or make brief visits home. While fans missed seeing Eve as a regular, many appreciated that the show found a way to keep her in the story, rather than writing her out entirely. With the recast of Mandy and Eve's reduced role, the Fox revival of Last Man Standing looked different from the show that ABC had originally aired. Some fans embraced the changes, while others struggled to accept them. Still, the ratings for the revived show proved that there was still a strong audience for it. The 7th season premiered with over 8 million viewers, a massive success for a Friday night sitcom. Fox's gamble had paid off. As the show continued, the writers found ways to address some of the casting changes within the story itself. Instead of ignoring the fact that Mandy looked completely different, they made self-aware jokes about it in the script. In one episode, Mike and Vanessa made comments about how many seemed off or not quite the same. It was a subtle way of acknowledging the change while keeping it lighthearted for the audience. With its new home at Fox, Last Man Standing continued for 3 more seasons. While it was still a rating success, the show faced new challenges. Production costs were rising, Tim Allen's salary had increased, and scheduling conflicts with cast members made filming more complicated. By 2020, discussions about how long the show would continue became more serious. Then, in October of that year, Fox made the announcement, Last Man Standing would end with its 9th season. For fans, it was bittersweet news. This time, there would be no surprise cancellation or sudden departure. The show would be able to conclude on its own terms, giving the Baxter family a proper send-off. But before it ended, the writers had one more surprise planned, one that would connect Last Man Standing to another beloved Tim Allen sitcom in a way that no one had expected. As Last Man Standing approached its final season, the cast and crew were determined to give fans a proper farewell. Unlike ABC's sudden cancellation years earlier, this time the decision to end the show was made carefully, allowing for a planned conclusion. Tim Allen, who had been involved in every stage of the series' revival, wanted the final season to be memorable. The writers faced the challenge of bringing the Baxter family's journey to a satisfying close, while also acknowledging the show's long history and the changes it had undergone over the years. For many fans, Last Man Standing had always been more than just a sitcom. It had become a reflection of shifting cultural and political landscapes, mirroring the real-world debates that played out in homes across the country. The show had tackled issues like parenting, generational differences, and changing values, often sparking discussions beyond just comedy. With this in mind, the final season aimed to balance humor with heartfelt moments, giving each character a meaningful send-off. One of the most ambitious ideas for the final season was a special crossover episode that would connect Last Man Standing to one of Tim Allen's most iconic roles, Tim the Toolman Taylor from Home Improvement. The idea had been discussed before, but bringing it to life was no simple task. Since Home Improvement was produced by a different company and owned by Disney, there were legal hurdles to overcome. Getting approval for the crossover required negotiations between multiple studios, and for a while it seemed like it might not happen. Tim Allen, however, was committed to making it work. He had long spoken about how much Home Improvement meant to him and how he still had great respect for the character of Tim Taylor. After months of discussions, the legal issues were finally resolved, and the script for the crossover episode was written. Allen was determined to make sure that Tim Taylor and Mike Baxter felt like two distinct characters, so he rewatched episodes of Home Improvement to get back into Tim Taylor's mindset. He wanted to ensure that fans would immediately recognize the character, rather than feeling like he was just playing another version of Mike Baxter. When the crossover episode aired, it became one of the most talked-about moments of the final season. The episode featured Tim Taylor visiting the Baxter family, leading to a series of interactions between the two characters that blended nostalgia with humor. There were references to Wilson, Tool Time, and even jokes about Tim Taylor's infamous history of accidents. It was a clever way to acknowledge Tim Allen's long television career while also giving Home Improvement fans a chance to see their favorite handyman one last time. While the crossover was a highlight, the final season also focused on resolving long-running character arcs. One of the biggest changes in the later seasons had been Eve Baxter's absence. Caitlin Dever's busy schedule had made it difficult for her to appear regularly, and the writers had worked around it by sending Eve to the Air Force Academy. But for the show's final episodes, they wanted to bring her back in a meaningful way. Dever, despite her demanding film career, agreed to return for a handful of episodes, allowing Eve to reunite with her family before the series ended. The writers also explored the next steps for Mandy and Kyle. With Molly McCook firmly established in the role of Mandy by this point, the characters' storylines had shifted to focus on her career and family life. She and Kyle, played by Christoph Sanders, had evolved from the quirky young couple they once were into parents preparing for their future. The final season gave them more development, showing how they had matured and taken on new responsibilities. As the series finale approached, the production team wanted to make sure that the show's last moments honored what Last Man Standing had always been about: family, work, and personal growth. The final episode brought the Baxter family together in a heartfelt way, acknowledging how far they had come while also leaving room for their future. There were no dramatic endings or sudden twists, just a warm, thoughtful goodbye that reflected the heart of the show. For Tim Allen, saying goodbye to Last Man Standing was a different experience than when Home Improvement had ended years earlier. This time, he had more control over how it all wrapped up, and he made sure that the cast and crew felt the same sense of closure. In interviews, he spoke about how much the show had meant to him, not just as an actor, but as someone who had been deeply involved behind the scenes. Nancy Travis, Hector Elizondo, and other longtime cast members also shared their appreciation for the journey they had been on together. Even after the final episode aired, Last Man Standing continued to have a strong presence. The series remained popular on streaming platforms, attracting new viewers who had missed its original run. While the show had changed over the years with cast departures, recastings, and shifts in direction, it had always retained its core themes. The characters had evolved, but the show's message about family and resilience had remained the same. In the end, Last Man Standing became one of the rare shows to be canceled, revived, and then given a proper farewell. Its journey from ABC to Fox from sudden cancellation to an emotional send-off, was unlike that of most sitcoms. For fans who had stuck with it from the beginning, the final season was a chance to reflect on everything that had made the show special. And while the Baxter family may have left television screens, their story remained a memorable part of sitcom history. Even after Last Man Standing aired its final episode, its impact continued to be felt. The show had accomplished something rare in modern television, being canceled, revived, and ultimately concluding on its own terms. Its journey from ABC to Fox, from sudden cancellations to major cast changes, proved how dedicated its fan base was. While many television shows struggled to regain momentum after a network change, Last Man Standing managed to maintain strong viewership throughout its run, proving that audiences were willing to adapt to changes as long as the heart of the show remained intact. Looking back, one of the most defining aspects of Last Man Standing was how it handled the departures and recastings of key characters. From Alexandra Krosny being replaced as Kristen to Molly Ephraim choosing not to return as Mandy, these changes could have easily derailed the show. Yet with each new season, audiences adjusted, even if they were initially resistant. In many ways, this reflected the show's core themes: family, change, and learning to adapt. Mandy Baxter's recasting was one of the most debated changes, and even by the final season, there were still discussions about whether Molly McCook was the right choice to replace Molly Ephraim. While some fans eventually accepted McCook's portrayal, others felt that the original Mandy's wit and energy had been irreplaceable. Despite the controversy, the writers continued to develop Mandy's character, giving her storylines that allowed McCook to make the role her own. By the show's end, Mandy had grown into a more independent, career-driven woman, reflecting the journey the character had taken from the early seasons. Caitlin Dever's limited role in the final seasons was another shift that had a lasting effect on the series. Eve Baxter had originally been one of the most dynamic characters, with a unique mix of sarcasm and ambition that made her stand out from her sisters. But as Dever's career took off, it became clear that she wouldn't be able to commit to full-time filming. The decision to send Eve to the Air Force Academy was a smart way to keep her connected to the Baxter family while allowing Dever the flexibility to pursue other projects. Though she only appeared occasionally in later seasons, her return in the final episodes gave fans a sense of closure. Jordan Masterson's version of Ryan Vogelson had one of the most significant character arcs in the series. Originally introduced as a stereotypical deadbeat dad played by Nick Jonas in the first season, Ryan was reimagined as a more complex and politically liberal character when Masterson took over the role. His ideological clashes with Mike Baxter became a recurring theme, creating some of the show's most interesting debates. Over time, Ryan evolved from an insecure young father to a successful business owner, even inadvertently embracing some of the capitalist principles he once criticized. His development was a testament to how Last Man Standing balanced comedy with character growth. Beyond the cast changes, the series also saw major shifts in its production and format. The move from ABC to Fox brought with it some budget adjustments, with Fox investing more into the show's revival than ABC had in its later seasons. This allowed for a strong return, but by the 9th season, production costs and scheduling conflicts were becoming more challenging. With Tim Allen's salary increasing and other expenses rising, the network ultimately decided that Season 9 would be the final chapter. The decision to end the show wasn't entirely about finances. Tim Allen had been deeply involved in the show's creative direction and wanted to ensure it had a proper conclusion. Unlike ABC's abrupt cancellation, this time the cast and crew had time to plan a satisfying farewell. They didn't want a dramatic ending, but rather a conclusion that felt natural, one that acknowledged how the characters had grown and where they were headed next. The final episode was a reflection of everything that had made Last Man Standing special. It didn't rely on shocking twists or over-the-top farewells. Instead, it focused on the family dynamic that had been the core of the show from the beginning. The Baxter family gathered for one last time, sharing heartfelt moments that reminded viewers why they had followed these characters for nearly a decade. The show ended on a note of warmth and nostalgia, reinforcing its message that while life changes, family remains constant. After the final episode aired, fans took to social media to express their gratitude for the show's journey. Many reflected on how the series had resonated with them, whether through its humor, its discussions on generational differences, or its portrayal of a working-class family navigating modern life. Despite its ups and downs, Last Man Standing had left its mark as one of the most enduring sitcoms of its time. Even though the show is no longer on the air, its legacy continues through reruns, streaming platforms, and the ongoing discussions about its themes and impact. Tim Allen has since moved on to other projects, but his role as Mike Baxter remains one of his most memorable performances. For many viewers, Last Man Standing was more than just a sitcom. It was a reflection of the everyday challenges of family life. told with humor and heart. The Baxter family may have said their goodbyes, but their story remains alive for those who continue to watch, laugh, and find meaning in the lessons the show had to offer. With that, we have reached the end of today's video. If you have come this far with us, be sure to check out other videos on the channel.